Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the American Lithium webinar. The main focus of this webinar is to provide an update as to where we are at operationally and to address a number of questions we've had from a number of our shareholders over the last few weeks and days. I'm happy to be joined here by Ted O'Connor, who is our Executive Vice President of the company. Ted, as you will know, was with Plateau Energy formerly, and then we're very lucky that Ted agreed to come and join us as we made the acquisition of Plateau. Originally, Ted was an independent director, and I'm delighted that he's agreed to step up and become part of the senior management team. Thanks for coming, Ted. So just to give everyone a quick overview, we have put out some recent news. I'll give you an overview first on where we're at in Nevada. We've been drilling at our TLC project since February of this year. As people will know, we got a plan of operations approved in early January. Gave us the ability to drill from 110 drill sites, multiple holes if we need it. And so our view of the world has been to very much get all the drilling done that we need to do to get through the PEA phase we're going through and then through feasibility and beyond. So it's an extensive program. We have 2 rigs running. We have a diamond rig that is focused on the core resource area and specifically in expanding and also high grading that core resource for some of the starter pits that we will bring in a mining plan in the preliminary economic assessment. As we announced today, we actually have had good success on the diamond drilling side. We've managed to extend the footprint of the key resource with some of the thickest and highest grades that we've seen to date. So again, that very much addresses some of our key objectives here in terms of where we would start operation when we begin mining and processing. So it's been very successful to date. As well as the diamond rig, we also have an RC rig going across the concessions, which is really doing discovery drilling on areas of the concessions where we haven't drilled to date. And we've got some interesting results coming from that. We have been somewhat delayed in getting drilling updates out to yourselves in the market. Unfortunately, the assay times in Nevada are very long right now, but the good news is we're starting to get that flow happening. Today was the first update that you'll see on drilling, but there are numerous more to come. So that's one of the key focuses of the project right now. The other key focus has been on finalizing our maiden preliminary economic assessment. We're well advanced on that process. Again, we had a few delays related to assays taking time and also COVID in Australia. Our main laboratory that a number of you know that we use is ANSTO in Sydney. We think they're the best laboratory on the planet in terms of analyzing process work for lithium. They've done a number of the Aussie hard rocks. They also did Falciani, and critically for TLC, they also did a lot of work for Bacanora on the Sonora and Claystone deposits in Mexico. So that PEA, though, has now gained a lot of momentum. It's been, as I say, coordinated by DRA Global, and we're expecting to have that finalized by the end of Q3 and out to the market in that timeline. So that's an update on where we are at TLC. In Peru, things have been somewhat delayed. Again, COVID obviously hit Peru hard, but in recent times as well, we've had some delays on getting final permits for our drill program. I'm pleased to let everyone know that we're actually now starting to make some good progress on the ground. Again, we released to the market that we've launched our environmental impact assessment on Falciani, which really is the first phase of pre-feasibility. That project is ready to go into pre-feas on a lot of levels. The one side that we do need to update for pre-feas is to move our indicated and inferred resource into measured and indicated. So we do need to do some drilling at Falciani. As you will have also hopefully noticed, we did announce that under the EIA that we launched, we are able to commence that drill program. And so we are drilling at Falciani shortly, and we believe that that will segue into the full drill program that we've had earmarked for a while now, and that we have mobilized to commence. So again, the drilling will start under the EIA, and then we believe segue into the full drill program. Really focused on infill and extension drilling at Falciani, some discovery drilling on some key new targets 5 to 6 miles west of Clarke, and then ultimately also going to do additional drilling at Makassani, where we've identified some good extension drilling opportunities from the existing deposits, as well as some new deposits themselves. So lots of things starting to kick off. Again, it's been a bit slower than we would have liked, but we feel that the momentum has shifted and we're starting to make some good progress. On the corporate side, as well as Ted joining the board, you will have noticed, Ted joining senior management, you'll have noticed that we brought in Claudia Tornquist as an independent audit chair, and we're delighted to have her join our team. And on the cash side of things, we have roughly $45 to $46 million on the balance sheet. So very well capitalized for the drill programs and the PEA work that we're doing, and also moving Falciani into feasibility. So with that, I think that's a fulsome update. Ted, is there anything that you would like to add to that?
No, apart from focusing on some of the results and the reason we're doing large diameter core, as Simon said, this program at TLC in Nevada is designed to give us sufficient material to do all the metallurgical test work that we will require on our road through pre-feasibility and feasibility work. We basically retain 3/4 of the sample for just such purposes. So these up to 100 holes 110 holes are key, and we won't have to go through any more drill permitting in Nevada after this.
Which is critical. That's but just permitting that program took us 13 months. So we very much designed our program to minimize the need to get additional permitting until such time as we have to get a mine permitted and start building. So thank you, Ted. So just looking at the questions we have in the inbox, obviously the main focus of this event was to answer people's questions. And if there are any other questions as we go along, please add them to the list and we'll try and get there. The first question that I can see is, when will the US listing happen, and how do you square that with today's price? That's an excellent question. It's hard to square anything with today's price. I would start by saying that the last sort of cycle in lithium, where we saw a big turn down in the price of the underlying stocks, was really driven by the commodity, and that's just completely not the case today. The commodity remains at all-time highs. The strength in the sector, I think, is borne out by the higher and higher prices that are being paid on the M&A side. Earlier this week, we saw Luz Petrol's asset in Argentina be acquired by Ganfeng for close to $1 billion. So that side of things remains hot. It's really, the market right now is just driven more by global sentiment and the global risk-off trade, which we think, certainly in our sector, we hope will revert in the relatively near future. So in terms of the US listing, we did go through that process. We've qualified for one of the major exchanges, and are finalizing the process on the other that we're looking at. Both of them do require a US $2 stock price. So as we sit today, we don't qualify for that. But our goal is to complete the process. We believe with the news flow that we've got coming and hopefully return to better market conditions, that we will quickly move above the required level. The rules are that we need to trade above $2 for 5 consecutive trading days, and then we have a 15-day period in which to complete the listing. So assuming that all happens, it still remains our goal to do that. We're not interested in any consolidation or other moves to get the price there. We fully believe that what we're seeing is a short-term phenomenon, and that the news flow and milestones that we've hit and that we're working on will ultimately help us get there and beyond. The second question was a similar question. It did have a second piece to it, which asked when will final products be ready for supply chain for sales. You know, in brief terms, how quickly we can move these projects through feasibility, mine build and into production is very much dictated by what happens on the permitting front. As I mentioned up top, you know, our goal and the way that we are developing things is very much to minimize the need to go back for permitting. So I would say in terms of TLC, if everything were to come together absolutely as we see, as we would hope, you know, we're looking at a 3 to 4 year period before we'd be in production. Probably with and Ted jump in on this, probably with a lithium carbonate, although we could add a step to the flow sheet to provide a hydroxide if that seemed to be the right thing to do as we move close to production. Any thoughts on that, Ted?
I think we'll answer those questions on our way through finalizing the PEA. You know, we do have 3 separate process options, and 1 or 2 of them could go either way to a hydroxide product or a battery grade lithium carbonate. So we're still weighing the capital and operating cost sort of things based on test work that is not quite finalized yet. So this is a work in progress.
Yeah. As I mentioned, that PA will be complete by the end of Q3, all things being equal. And as Ted said, it will have greater clarity in terms of the timelines. You know, but our hope would very much be to move through feasibility, first pre-fees in 2023 and then bankable fees in 2024, so that we're ready to build a mine thereafter. And then if you flip over to Falciani is further ahead. It's a high quality, high purity asset that has already demonstrated the ability to produce battery grade lithium carbonate. And ANSTO have continued to refine that project. So I think, Ted, we're getting close to 99.9% on the battery grade side, which is a phenomenal result and underpins again the strength of that asset. So it's further ahead. It's ready for feasibility. As I mentioned off the top, we do have to reclassify the resources as M&I, so they become the reserves in feasibility. But with all the work we've done and the fact that we've already launched the EIA, we believe we can have a very fast process through pre-feasibility, you know, hopefully by Q2, Q3 next year, and then move through bankable feasibility thereafter. And I think Falciani is probably 6 to 9 months ahead of TLC in terms of moving into production. So, you know, hopefully the latter half of 2025. Again, Ted, I don't know whether you've got any thoughts on that.
No, but I would like to jump in on it. I agree with your timelines. Just to look at question 4 and kind of integrate the 2 questions here.
Yeah, let's just do that. So the webinar will be recorded so people know, and then 4 is like some elaboration on the further timeline, test pit production.
So Simon addressed the production, the sort of test pit concept. In Nevada, we're permitted in our current plan of operations for up to 3 test pits. So they're already permitted, so that's not going to be a timeline. We're actually thinking that to do our pilot studies, we will probably have enough material from our large diameter drill program and all the reverse circulation drilling that we're doing to have sufficient material that we might not even have to excavate these test pits. In Peru, the permitting is for that kind of test mining, I guess, is relatively straightforward. It's part of the EIA, the more intense environmental impact assessment process. But we have outcropping lithium mineralization right in the resource area and yet to be drilled to the southwest. So there's lots of material sitting right at surface. So it's not going to be an issue. So the timing would be as soon as we're into pre-feasibility, we want to start doing our pilot work.
Yeah, and in terms of the question does go on and ask how large is the production duration? Well, I mean, obviously we're finalizing all of that on the PA at TLC, but I would say that Falciani should give listeners a good guide. On the Falciani PA, the life of mine is, I think, 33 years, Ted. It's
Yes.
in three phases. It's an extremely large project that ultimately ends up, I think, in years 13 to 33, producing 85,000 tons of lithium carbonate annually. I don't know if TLC can be quite that large yet, but we certainly believe it can get to 50, 60,000 tons a year. And, with the size of resource, again, it's probably, the PA will probably have something like a 30-year mine life, but the reality is with the size of resource, these projects can both go much longer than that.
Yeah, the resources support much longer, but in a potential mine plan, who knows what, you can't forecast stuff
100 years out.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, no, it's a good point. So next question, can American Lithium sustain a market crash? How well is the company financed? As I said off the top, we have, I think, roughly $46 million in the till today. We did spend about $4 million recently, as some of you will know, on securing water rights in the Big Smoky Valley, which is critical for our operations going forward. There's very few sources up there, so we were delighted to acquire that. And that is an asset on our balance sheet that I think is going to become more and more valuable. But we're well capitalized. We had a budget of roughly $30 million this year, which was for a lot of drilling in Peru, which has been a bit delayed. The drilling that we're doing in TLC, a maiden PA at TLC, updated PAs on both Falciani and Makassani, and then the movement to feasibility. So it's a large budget. As I said, it has been a bit delayed, so I would say that budget now takes us out to middle of next year, which would still leave us with 15, 16 million on the balance sheet. So we are certainly good, even running flat out for the next 18 months and beyond. We also have a lot of support from major shareholders who've supported us at every round. And we have probably, Alex is on my right here, probably 70 to 80 million dollars in warrants that will come in. Obviously the stock price now is a good bit lower than it was, but whenever the stock gets up to $4 and beyond, we typically see a lot of those warrants start to get exercised. So we feel good about where we are on the balance sheet perspective, and we will continue to manage it very prudently, but also very much with a view to driving these projects forward as quickly as we can. 6, is any updates on the PA, which we've given? I think we've talked about size ranges of the workforce at Tonopah over the next 5 years. It really depends. I mean, obviously, I think on the ground, Ted, we've probably got a team of 10 full-time, and obviously we've got drillers on the ground and consultant personnel. When we move into production and build a mine, though, it's going to be several hundred people.
Yeah. It's for the scale that we think will, and once again, this will be answered in the PEA, but the scale that we think we'll need, it'll be around 200 full-time jobs in phase 1. Yeah. And
Okay.
construction, of course, 50 to 70% higher.
Yeah. Yeah, so 200 once we're in production, and while it's being built, probably 50 to 70% higher than that. Okay, what's the Peru? What's the path of drill permits on granted within a reasonable time frame? Excellent question. As I mentioned, what we've focused on in the meantime, and what I think is really driving things, is what we can control. We've launched our EIA, as we mentioned. So we're doing the environmental work, which will form a key piece of the pre-fees. And under that, we can do some drilling, which will allow us hopefully to move ahead on some of the infill drilling that we require for reclassification. It is focused on hydrological drilling, and that's the first target. But again, we continue to believe that we will see the full permits happen quickly, and the fact that we'll have drills up on, Trans-Hermanas and Falciani will actually be a great segue into the main program as those permits get finalized. So if for some reason we didn't get those permits finalized, we would focus on what we've got. As we've also announced, we're updating things. We're updating the Falciani flow sheet for the byproducts. We've successfully shown the ability to add a circuit in on the SOP side, sulfated potash. And some of you will know that is a critical fertilizer that the Peruvians require for the high-end agricultural sector. Some of the social issues in recent months in Peru have been in and around the lack of fertilizer supply and also the pricing. Falciani would actually enable Peru to be self-sufficient ultimately on the SOP side, so strategically very important and also a very strong economic byproduct. The other key byproduct we've always talked about is cesium, which is used in night vision applications for the military and industrially globally and other specialist industrial processes. It's a niche market. There is not a lot of supply in the West. It's declining. Again, it's controlled, refined cesium is controlled out of China. And we believe that Falciani can be a major supplier of that. So right now we've been able to add the circuit for the SOP side of things, and we're in the process of adding the circuit for cesium. So at the very least, what you will see is you'll see an updated PEA which brings in the byproducts and reclassifies and hopefully there's some resource extension. If everything goes according to plan, that drill program will be much larger and we'll see a bigger extension also included in the PEA. Any thoughts on that, Ted, or anything to add?
No, that's perfect.
Yeah. So how can we best leverage our proven and probable resources? I think you mean measured and indicated resource as well. Yeah, I mean, M&I obviously is the best classification for resources. They are the resources that become the reserves that are required to move through feasibility. So, obviously we have a very large M&I resource on the TLC side, which we will expand, and high grade is mentioned, and that will form the reserves as we move TLC into feasibility, which Ted, if we finish the drill program there later this fall, I assume, we will then move pretty quickly thereafter into the feasibility phase. So, you'd see that happen next year. Agreed?
Yeah, agreed. And I think in the interim to get our latest drilling and all the chemistry that will come in up to perhaps around the end of this month, we will put a cutoff on doing a kind of a mineral resource estimate update that certainly will expand all categories based on where the drilling is and the results we announced today. And the drill program will not be complete, but we'll be able to expand the resource ideally once again in the future. But for the PEA, we'll have to make a drill cutoff date, which will be relatively soon, and then that goes to the mining people to optimize the mining plan. And certainly with the results of the latest drilling this morning, we think we know where we'll start.
Yeah, exactly. Being able to high grade is a really key element that's been great.
And this starting right at surface, so that's another key. There's no stripping other than the gravel, the young gravels on top.
Perfect. And on the Falciani side, as we mentioned, at the very least, what the work we're launching now will enable us to reclassify the indicated and inferred as M&I, which again will then allow us to move through the feasibility process. So that's 9. Number 10, as American Lithium partners with major companies in EV solar to meet their demand for lithium. The answer to that is not yet. Like a lot of companies, we do see interest from some of the big auto players and some of the other big mining companies globally, both from the Chinese side and what I'd call the West. So there's definitely a lot of interest in our projects. I think as we move forward here, we're going to see more and more of that. Certainly more and more of the autos are going up chain to secure their future supply of critical components like lithium. And we very much expect that to continue. So, you know, one of the things that I've learned in this business, and it's given me lots of great areas, that you don't want to give up your offtake too soon in the process, and that's ultimately what these partners would want. So it's a trade-off. It's finding the right time to bring in a partner, make sure you don't lock up all of your offtake, but also make sure you've got some key strategic support as you move forward. So we will weigh all those up, and we'll bring in the right partner at the right time as we move forward. Do you plan on contracting out the drilling of your Makassani uranium project? Well, we own our own drills, but Ted, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So we have 6 diamond drill rigs. We were planning on having 3 to 4 down at on the lithium side at Belchani doing the resource expansion and update, and 1 doing the exploration, and then having 1 or 2 up at the Makassani project. So we're pretty self-sufficient when it comes to our diamond drilling in Peru. At TLC, we actually have 2 separate contractors doing the work, 1 diamond, 1 reverse circulation rig. So yeah, we do contract those things, and I can tell you that the overall cost is probably 50 to 60% higher when you look at the going rates for drilling in Peru versus what it ends up costing us. So we get way more bang for our buck. There's a bit of more upkeep and things like that too, but in general, it's better, more cost effective. And as far as the uranium side of the project or the Peruvian assets go, we're not necessarily planning to sell anything, but I think Sam has been fairly clear that we do plan to spin it out at some point. Ideally, once we have a better handle on how much uranium is there and get some clarity on export rules and regulations in Peru for shipping yellow cake out of the country.
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, that's the second half of the question. If our results are positive, do we plan to sell Makassani for the capital for TLC of Belchani? So, we've looked at this, as Ted said. Makassani is an excellent asset. It's a large asset. It's one of the largest undeveloped projects. I think it's all cost Ted one of the cheapest outside of Kazakhstan on the planet. So it is a quality asset, and what we believe the right thing to do. We're not getting value for it within a lithium developer, but we also don't want to sell it. We think it's way better for our shareholders and for the company if we spin it into its own vehicle. We have within our management team, including Ted, significant uranium knowledge. Ted and Lawrence built the Makassani district over 15 years. And so we think their input into whatever company we spin it into makes sense. So the goal would be to keep a decent stake within American Lithium, probably keep a royalty as well, but spin the majority of the stock out to shareholders of record at the time that we do it. So the question will be, what's the timing for that? Well, as Ted said, we're doing a lot of work right now on the admin side, separating the concessions between non-metal, which in Peru is lithium, and metal, which would include uranium in a Peru context. and also doing this tax structuring work, so that we're ready come the fall to decide when, depending on markets, is the right time to actually do the spin out. But again, we're doing a lot of work to get that in place, and we think that way we're going to unlock value for the company and all of the shareholders. Okay, 12, status of drilling and assays and permitting. I think we dealt with that. Scale compared to others, well, Falciani at 85,000 tons a year, Ted, I think would be one of the largest projects on the planet. I think that's more than all of the lithium produced by Chile in its entirety. I think TLC at 50 to 60,000 tons certainly is up there with the big boys, and with the potential, I think, to be as big ultimately as Thacker Pass. Obviously, we're a couple of years behind Lithium Americas, but that is our goal to get to where they are, not only from a nameplate capacity at Thacker, but also where they are in terms of market cap. I think our assets stack up very well. The next question is, what about new batteries made of sodium? I'm not.
You skipped one.
Oh, I did? Oh.
Any concern about the actual political and economic situation in Peru?
Yeah, we deal with whatever government is in power. The bottom line about Peru is it's a fantastic mining jurisdiction historically. It's got a fair royalty regime and corporate tax structure. Yes, there's been some political instability with the latest government. I mean, really brought about by the fact you have a very slim majority for the guys that came in. They came in on a left-wing mandate, but are dealing with a center-right parliament. So, to get anything done in Peru, you've got to get the center-right on side. And, I think that's why you've seen the recent government cut ties with the left and really move themselves more to the center and actually start to bring into place some quality players in the cabinet who hopefully will be able to unlock the political logjam and help things move forward. It's certainly not made our lives easy having, I think we're on our 6th mining minister, Ted. But we're very pleased with the latest appointee who seems to be very well qualified with the job. And as I say, I think we're seeing a little bit of a period of stability, which we're starting to see with some momentum in our projects, and we think that momentum will continue to grow. So, and I think on the economic side, well, inflation is running rife globally. I think the one thing that we can really help out again, as I mentioned, is on the fertilizer side, which is a major driver in Peru. And the only other thing I would say is, people have heard talk about nationalization in Mexico and Chile and other places. The nice thing about Peru is that under the mining constitution, the government cannot participate in mining. So mining is protected by the constitution. If they were ever to try to nationalize it, which I don't think they have any intention of doing, but if they were, then they would have to change the constitution, which they're never going to achieve in the current parliament for sure.
And in fact, the current president has stated that publicly and privately that there's no interest in nationalizing, certainly not lithium. And there's been some discussion about copper, but that's off the table as well.
Yeah, and he made that comment directly to us, Ted, when we met with him, and allowed us to put that out in our own press release, if you remember from last year.
Yeah.
So sodium battery, that I don't know particularly the chemistry on that. All I would say on this is it took 38 years for lithium ion to become the incumbent technology. It takes a long time to test these technologies. It takes a long time to set up supply chains. And we all know the issues with supply chains in the current world. And the other key point is lithium is the third lightest element on the periodic table. The only things that are lighter are helium and hydrogen, I think. Ted, you're the technical guy. So in terms of a metal, there is no better metal for lightweight conductivity, and it's a very good conductor of electricity. So I don't see why there's a need to change out the incumbent. And even if anyone came out with a brand new technology, it would take them a long time to test, prove it, and set up the supply chain. So I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. And I think that's underpinned by all of the forecasts you see from any analyst out there about where EVs are going and the demand for lithium, cobalt, and other battery metals long term.
Yeah, I think the sodium may have some applicability for large scale grid storage, where it doesn't have to be mobile and you're not worried about size or particularly worried about energy density. But any other application, there's no there in every battery chemistry that's out there, apart from the sodium, they all have lithium regardless of what the other components are, because of its unique lightness and also unique electrochemical properties.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the other one that I think for large scale could be good would be vanadium, obviously. So I think there are applications where lithium ion probably makes less sense, but for size, for anything to do with transportation, even some of the smaller storage applications, I don't think you need to look past lithium. What is the impact of the additional minerals found in Peru? I'm not really sure what that means. Obviously, Peru is the second biggest copper producer on the planet. I think fourth biggest on the gold side, Ted, something like that. Lots of silver. What's next? I mean, obviously, we're bringing lithium and uranium, so those are going to be next.
I think they might be asking about the sulfate of potash, cesium, and all that.
Oh, gotcha.
We sort of covered it, especially on the SOP. We know that at phase 2 of the expansion, that would basically be what Peru uses annually now, give or take. And in the phase 3 expansion, Peru could be a net exporter, or American Lithium would be a net exporter.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, apologies for being done there.
No worries.
But yeah, no, absolutely. Potash is going to be a key piece. What is the legal status of our court case on land ownership? Well, you know, when we acquired Plateau, the legal debate was, or the legal case and the dispute was very much baked into the stock price. We've always said that Falciani was a hidden gem that a lot of people had overlooked, with or without the 32 concession, and we continue to believe that. We're seeing lots of room for discovery. I mean, this is a massive plateau. It's 40 kilometers by 80. We have, I think, Ted, now with our recent acquisition, 170 concessions. So 32 of those would be 15 to 20%. Yes, it's meaningful. Yes, we obviously want them back, especially given any legal judgment I've seen makes it absolutely clear that the company did nothing wrong. So we will continue to go down that path. As everyone will know, we had a very strong ruling in our favor from the lower court in last fall. That was appealed by the regulators, which was anticipated. They do it as a matter of course, and they appealed it to the Superior Court. That process is well advanced, and we would expect to see some resolution on that, I think, Ted, over the next couple of months. Yeah. And all the legal advice and everything we've seen is that will be resolved in our favor. I think right now we're batting 5 for 5. If you look at the injunctions, the attempt to appeal the injunctions, which was refused, and then the actual judgment from the lower court. So we haven't seen anything put forward by the regulators, any new points of law, any new arguments. So there doesn't seem to be any reason to overturn judgment. We will see how that flows in the next couple of months, and we will adjust accordingly. But we're as confident as we can be without being overconfident. Is that a good summary, Ted?
Yep, exactly.
Will the lithium offer exceed the demand in 1 to 2 years? How do you expect the lithium market? Well, again, I'm not an analyst. I was at the Benchmark Gigafactory conference a couple of weeks ago in Washington. I haven't seen any analyst. I didn't see any company. I think Albemarle was more bullish than a lot of the benchmark analysts even. And the benchmark analysts are predicting a doubling in lithium demand by 2025, and then at least a doubling again by the end of the decade. I think it's even higher than that. So right now, as far as I look at it, the numbers I see, we're in a deficit where demand is outstripping supply. I think benchmark, for example, have that deficit last until 2025, 2026, and even thereafter, the market will be tightly supplied. So, I don't see anything. That doesn't mean that we won't see the spot prices moderate. I mean, this is a nascent market. Most of the big players trade on a contracted basis anyway, rather than a spot. But you're even seeing, I think, from Albemarle's results, that a lot of the contracts that are out there are north of 30,000 a ton of LCE, which is spectacular. I mean, if you look at the PA on Falciani, the assumed price for LCE in that was 12,000 a ton. So we're certainly looking at a big jump from that.
Mm-hmm. And another interesting note, there's also a publicly announced spot price for spodumene concentrate. And I just read Pilbara Minerals sold spodumene concentrate above the posted price for the last quarter. So, contracts are contracts, and they don't necessarily follow the spot. Yeah. So it's an interesting time.
It's a very interesting prime time, and you are right. There is more and more as contracts come off. There is more and more lithium trading at spot prices, which given they're close to 70,000 a ton, is unbelievable. But obviously, very, very positive for the sector. Short, medium, and long term, in my view. How will you neutralize the acid leach of Claystone? Do you understand that?
Yeah, for sure. So we haven't finalized our process route yet. Recall we have three main options. Two involved acid, and one is kind of roast with water leach. And so we wouldn't have to neutralize the roast water leach method. But on when you have your sulfate solution that's carrying lithium and all the other things that get dissolved in the acid, part of the process to get the lithium out is to raise the pH. So it means neutralize the solutions. And that needs to be done, and we use lime for that. The tailings, we're seriously looking at dry stack paste tailings, and they will need to be, if we use the acid route, they will need to be neutralized, and we can do that with much cheaper material like limestone or dolomite. So it's we will have to deal with neutralizing things, because you can't have. But we're in a dry environment.
Yeah, but safe to say best practice and latest technology will be applied to that.
Exactly.
Okay. I am long on lithium. What book or resource material do you suggest to a new investor to learn about mining lingo and the industry in general? I'll pass that on to you, Ted.
Okay. So I can't think of any real books like I know they're out there, like Mining for Dummies, but I came across an interesting group because I did a presentation at the Society of Economic Geology conference in Chile a few years ago, and I'm still on their mailing list, and they're offering something called geology and mining for non-geologists, and it I won't say dumbs it down, but it basically tells you what you need to know. And I think it's about $200 for like a full day session. It's through something called the Chile Mining Group. I can try and find the email and put it somewhere, but if you want to email me directly, whoever wrote this question, it's ted@americanlithiumcorp.com.
Thanks, Ted. I mean, the other thing I would suggest, we do subscribe to Benchmark here. Benchmark also put out a bunch of articles, commentary, price forecasts on battery materials. So they're an industry research group, but their focus, rather than being across the mining sector, is very much on battery minerals. So you will get some very in-depth and quality research on where they think EVs are going, where they think the demand for lithium, cobalt, copper, nickel, all of the key elements that are used in lithium ion, where they think they're going. So I would also Google benchmark and see what you can find out that way.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
member associations like Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada, they have lots of infographics and things for mining and best practices and things like that. So hopefully that'll help.
Yeah. Okay. And then 21, the biggest point is, when are you going to be a positive income company? So what I would say is, we can create a lot of value for shareholders never being a positive income company. I'm not trying to be flippant, but what I'm saying is, in the development world, how we develop and de-risk our assets and deposits and projects and move them forward creates exponential value in those assets. There is an extremely strong M&A market. Off the top, I was mentioning the recent Police Patrol acquisition by Ganfeng. We know Ganfeng has been very interested in the past, for instance, in Falciani. So our goal is to just keep developing value in our assets, and there's lots of short-term milestones at both TLC and Falciani, and indeed Makassani, that we think will do that, make our projects more valuable, so that if we do receive a takeover bid or someone looking at our projects, we're obviously in position to recognize good value. If we do continue to move along the development curve and get to the point where we can take one or more of these assets into production, as we've said, Ted, I think Makassani on the uranium side is probably 2 to 3 years out from production, and Falciani and TLC are likely 3 to 4 years, with Falciani closer to 3 and TLC likely closer to 4. So those are just some guidelines. Obviously, don't hold me to them. There's a lot that has to go into that, including favorable permitting, et cetera, et cetera. What date will the PA be released? As we mentioned, we're targeting the end of Q3. We had hoped to have it out before now, but delays in the world on assays and COVID have pushed it back a bit. We've got good momentum now, and barring any resurgence on any of those fronts, we should be in good position to get that out by Q3, and yet the end of Q3. And yes, it will include a full financial analysis on the project,
including sensitivities.
Yeah, including sensitivities, so you can look at best case, worst case scenario, and median case, etc. And it shouldn't be underestimated. That is a very key milestone for the analysts and a number of the other key people that follow this company. We do have some strong research from 4 of the banks, and they do net present value calculations on the projects. The PEA will allow them to do that off a real live set of data, so it'll make their jobs easier, and it will be a much more precise valuation that can be driven from that. What are the top 3 key risks to the project? In development world, obviously being continuing to be well capitalized, spend your capital wisely, and we will continue to do that with prudent financial managers. We have a strong balance sheet. Obviously, we have to keep an eye on market conditions and see where things are going, and react accordingly. At this point in time, we are not slowing down. We believe that this is temporary, and we will continue to drive our projects ahead. But we do continue to analyze that. And anything else you see, Ted, on the risk perspective?
I think there's the permitting and approvals risk, and that for us in both Peru and Nevada also involves the local communities and the local indigenous people. we've always done a great job in Peru, and we're starting, obviously, that we're ramping up in Nevada. We're doing all the right things down there too. So, but timelines and keeping everybody informed and up to date, and treating the community, whether it's Tonopah or Makassani, it's respectful and open dialogue and helping out where you can.
Yeah, I think that is a huge one. So obviously capital, but community support, and Plaza did a phenomenal job on engaging the communities, which we've continued doing. And unlike a lot of other communities, other projects in South America, we enjoy very strong community support, so much so that they have all Senate representatives to Lima to meet with the president and basically, say to him, come on, you got to do everything you can to help us drive these projects ahead. So community, and then the third for me would be overall permitting. Typically, it has been more straightforward in Peru, obviously, with the political situation we've seen in recent months with a little bit of instability and changing out of ministers. It's slowed that down, but typically I think the permit process is clearer there from the perspective that in the US, the permit side of things is pretty old. It's an old system, does need to my mind, it needs to be given an overhaul. You can protect the environment and the native bands, but at the same time allow these projects to proceed in a fast fashion, because at the end of the day, getting these critical minerals out into the industry is a key factor. So I don't know, Ted, I think those three factors would be my big ones.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on selling the company to a bigger development player? As we've mentioned, at the right time and at the right price, we've obviously got to be open to it. Our job is to do the best job for the company and its shareholders. It's mining is a difficult business. Lithium mining is very difficult, and there's lots of lithium out there, but being able to extract it and extract it economically is very challenging. It's more of a chemistry project almost than mining. And so there comes a point where the right partner, or indeed the right group to take it on with a big balance sheet to spend the big capital dollars, may well make sense. So our job is to keep building the projects, driving them forward, keep developing them, and making sure that we can maximize value at the appropriate time. We're taking 10 more questions apparently before the end of the webinar. All others can be directed to our info email. I got that right? Okay. Sorry, I'm bad at following direction. And we'll also have another webinar when we get new significant updates, etc. So is there any further information about your progress? So the 4.5 million Department of Energy grant, good question. We've not updated on this for a while. At this point, I would say that that project is on hold. We decided it made sense to focus on our own processing options that we have. We have three very viable processing options for TLC acid. We're using sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid, and also roasting. So, that project hasn't moved forward much. We may decide it doesn't make sense to move forward on it and distract the team from the current focus. I think that's an accurate summary, Ted.
Yes.
That doesn't mean we won't look to the DOE or DOD for other funding. There's more and more government capital becoming available for piloting and as we move forward towards mine construction. So I am very pleased, although I think more needs to be done on the permitting side. I'm very pleased to see the capital that is now with the DOD and the DOE to help lithium and other critical minerals. No, we don't have any offtake agreements yet, as we discussed above. We're not quite at the stage where we would want. You do see companies at our stage do them, I think it's too early. We want to make sure we keep our powder dry and get the best deal we can for the company. You don't want to take a offtake too early and then be stuck with it for the rest of your producing life. So again, there's a time and a place, and we're definitely getting there, but it's going to be on the right terms. What would the true value of LI according to management? Oh, which percentage of NPV would they apply? Or what company do they compare with? Well, the company we compare ourselves with is the one that has a very similar name to us, Lithium Americas. It's obviously further down the development path than us. They're constructing a mine at Thacker Pass. Cacheri in Argentina on the brine side is also well advanced in its construction, and they obviously acquired Millennial. But I would say that TLC ultimately has the potential to have a similar nameplate to Thacker, and as you've seen from what we said earlier, Falciani has the potential to be one of the biggest projects globally, certainly in North America. So, you know, they're a couple of years ahead of us for sure, but our goal would be to close the gap between our market cap and their market cap. I hear that a large Australian mining major is leaving Peru because of the political risk status quo. Does LI believe they will be able to obtain their permits to drill in case of the EI study easier than drilling permits? Yeah, I think, and I'll let Ted jump in, but I think again we've shown that the reason we've gone the EIA route because we want to push the project forward as quickly as possible, but also because we believe Falciani is ready for feasibility. It does allow us to do some drilling, but our goal is to continue to push forward to get the main permits as well for the big program. And we don't see anything that would lead us to believe that we won't get those. I mean, obviously, it's frustrating that it's taken some time. And, you know, again, there's been a bit of state of flux in the mining ministry, but we sense a calmer period where I think these things are going to start to fall in place. Anything to add on that, Ted?
Yeah, I mean, the start of the EIA is we're allowed to drill a few holes for hydro, so water geology and understanding the water, groundwater table, etc. But the EIA is the first. Launching it is the first step in our feasibility work, but the idea is to get the Falciani deposit area essentially cleared, so we don't have to go back and do smaller environmental studies in Peru, they're called DIAs, that allow you to drill, 20 platforms. We can drill as many holes as we want. So that's part of the reason why the EIA is being initiated as well. But we'll start with our 10-hole program for hydrogeology and obviously seeing what the rocks tell us too.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. I mean, what we're looking for right now is the DIA drilling, which obviously we have the
permits in quotes.
Yeah, we have the community approvals for that. We're just waiting for the final sign-off. But as Ted said, as we move through the EIA, those DIAs become, we don't need them anymore. We can drill as widely as we want under the EIA once it's approved. Have I got that right?
Yeah.
Ted? Yeah, thank you. Is it true that the higher judicial authorities in the fourth court decided yesterday that whole appeal should be cancelled and restarted from scratch in the sixth court? Not that we know of. Does this mean Judge Castro will be changed? The position is, as I said, is we're going through a process now that's with the Superior Court. There's a number of steps to that, and we expect that process to be completed over the next couple of months. Do you plan on infill drilling the disputed concessions anyway? Any view on the delay timeframe for a final judgment? Well, we talked about that. I think most of our drilling that we would do under the DIA and indeed this initial environmental drilling is on the concessions that aren't disputed, but some of it, Ted, probably would go on to.
There are some up to the north because that's what we didn't. When we finished up the resource drilling, we didn't go up to the northwest on what is now what are the disputed concessions. But yes, we would be drilling there, because, you know, and it's not good money after bad. It's those concessions are still in our name. We've had nothing but positive rulings, and it's just an appeal process. So we're in the driver's seat, believing that so far they're ours, they still ours, and that's all there is to it. So there will be some drilling up there.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say again, without being overconfident, we strongly believe that this case will end up being found in our favor. I mean, there's no guarantee on that, but we are certainly planning for success. But at the same time, we know that even if we lose the 32, we continue to control the plateau, and we will very much look to expand and infill at Tres Hermanos and the rest of the Falciani deposit, as well as looking for new deposits. So I think that's clear cut. Any plans to acquire the Cruz battery metals property? Not at this stage. We obviously see a lot of players in and around us at TLC, a lot of closeology, people locking up land and pointing to what we've been doing. If any of those make sense at any point, we'll look at them. As far as I've seen to date, most of them just seem to be, again, a bit of closeology. But we will continue to review everything around us, obviously. Is this clay deposit comparable to competitors in the neighborhood? And if yes, which one? Well, it has. You plan additional studies on it. We've talked about this. Yeah, I mean, there are, on the Esmeralda trend, I think the big four, Ted, would be Thacker Pass, Ioneer at Rhyolite Ridge, ourselves, and then the bit to the south would be Cypress. So we're the most advanced ones. Each of them is a bit different. I think our grades are closer to Cypress. Thacker typically has higher grades, although the grades we put out this morning are pretty close to theirs. What our basin offers is it's a freshwater basin, so low energy deposited lithium, and we'd be able to show we can extract it in as little as 10 minutes using acid leach. So I think from a processing side of things, we have some advantages. And the other big advantage we have over our peer group is we don't have environmental issues. We have no endangered species or plants, and we don't believe we have cultural issues. We've started dialogue with local tribes early to make sure that's the case, and I think we're trying to learn from the mistakes of others and make sure that we position ourselves as well as we can to advance this project as quickly as possible. Well, Jindalee, I believe, we're being asked about Jindalee. Ted, I think that's the ones in Oregon, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. It's the other side of the Thacker Pass, McDermott Caldera in Oregon.
Okay. How do we compare to that?
Well, their resource is smaller. It's geologically, it's more like Thacker Pass, so it's got a hydrothermal overprint, so things don't leach as easily, but the grades can potentially be higher.
Okay. The issue, of course, over there is they're in Oregon. Not knocking other jurisdictions, but I think Nevada there's a reason it's the #1 mining jurisdiction in the U.S. and in many people's eyes globally, despite rather slow permitting regime. 33. Well, with the political situation in the U.S., support for lithium could drop in January 2023. Will that have an effect on this company? We're really not sure why anyone would think support for lithium will drop in 2023. Again, not trying to be rude or whatever, but I haven't seen anything that would imply that. They're devoting more money to the DOE to provide grants and loan guarantees to get projects built. The DOD has now classified lithium a metal for security purposes, so they can stockpile it.
Strategic minerals discussions and legislation and have bipartisan support. So it's and it's primarily driven by the concentration of production of these key elements like lithium in China. And the Western world, including the U.S. of both sides of the political aisle, want to see that changes.
Yeah. So I think, yes, you still have the environmental lobby who are always going to think that mining is bad. I don't think, all we can do is continue to adopt best environmental practices and try and show them that the overall benefits of the projects outweigh negatives. And, I think you are starting to see broad-based government support for these projects. My hope again is that also enables a faster permitting process. If you look at Australia, they have a very embedded mining culture and industry, and their permitting process is eminently faster, and yet they put environmental requirements to the fore as well as anyone. So I think there are definitely some lessons, but I do think from what we're seeing, the U.S. government is trying to catch up, and industry is going to make it do so, because if not, they're going to have to get all of their refined critical minerals from China. And I think the issue in Ukraine and the war there has just shown how dangerous it is to put all your eggs in the basket of a regime that maybe doesn't have your best interests at heart. So I think that's a good place to stop. Sorry it's gone on a lot, but we did want to make sure we got to all of the key questions that were there. Please stay subscribed to our newsletters and social media. It was a pleasure to speak to you all, and we really do appreciate your support. We recognize that in these trying times on the market, that's not easy, but we really are driving ahead on our projects. We've got a lot of milestones coming up on all fronts, and please just reach out to our team if you need any further information on anything. Many thanks.